Good afternoon and welcome to Design Master Training. My name is David Robison. Today, we are going to be looking at the new features that we've rolled out in ElectroBIM over the last year. If you're attending the training live, you can ask questions in the chat box. If you're watching the recording of the training, you can contact our support team using the options on our website. So over the last year, we did a number of smaller releases for ElectroBIM. And I want to talk today about just what those new features were, just to review them, just to make sure everyone's aware of the new stuff that we've had that has come out and that you're taking advantage of them. A big change that we did is that we changed the name of the software from Design Master Electrical RT to ElectroBIM. That's not going to have a huge impact on what you are doing design-wise. That was just a marketing decision we made really to differentiate this software from what we're doing in our AutoCAD software, because our AutoCAD software is Design Master Electrical. Having the Revit software be Design Master Electrical RT, they were very similar names. It was a very long name. There's a lot of confusion as to what we were talking about with customers when they came in with support questions. So we did want to differentiate the two different products that we have. We ended up on ElectroBIM as the new name for the Revit software. So that was rolled out in December. So everything going forward is going to be referencing ElectroBIM as the name of our software. In February, we put out the first release in 2023, and we had the stated goal of putting out multiple small releases, which always is a little bit of a nerve-wracking thing to do, to promise new features in software development, because you never actually know how that process is going to go. I'm really happy to report that we were able to deliver on that promise. We actually had 3 releases last year. If you look back at our release notes, generally we were doing a release like every year or maybe every other year. And they would be larger. They'd have a lot of stuff in them. But there was a long time in there where we had features that were done that we just weren't putting out to people. So last year we made the decision to adjust our development cycle and to take smaller chunks of features and get those out on a more consistent and regular cadence. So you're seeing more releases, they're much smaller. So that's the decision we made. And we hope that you're finding those more frequent feature releases helpful. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we did do last year in 2023. First feature I want to mention is that we added the Generate One Line feature. This will let you take a model in Revit where you've created your panels and your transformers and you've inserted them and you've connected them, and we can actually draft them for you. So I'm going to make a new drafting view here to demonstrate this. And we can run the Generate One Line command. I'll take my service transformer, click OK, select a point. And what the software is going to do is it's going to lay out all of the devices automatically for us. So this is really convenient if you are putting in your devices in Revit before creating the single line diagram. It will lay everything out for you, saving a little bit of drafting work. What comes in isn't necessarily exactly what you want the final output to be. The intention is to get the stuff on there, be maybe 75 or 80% right, and then you move stuff around after this and you adjust where things are, what the labels are, how things are located. So there's going to be some drafting work after this. It's not intended this would be a one and done command, but it's going to get most of the stuff in there that you need so that you can then start manipulating it rather than having to lay out all these panels. So on the one hand, it does take just a moment to get everything inserted. On the other hand, in the time I've been explaining this to you, it has laid out all of the panels in our project. So now we have a single line diagram and we can start making our adjustments from here. There are a number of features that we have to support what this is going to look like. If you go into customization and project options, in the options, we have the single line diagram, which is the general settings for your single line. Then we have a bunch of options related to the Generate One Line, and this is going to affect how that output is going to look. We've got options for the spacing, for how far apart pieces are located. We've got an option for how you lay out the panels if they're based upon circuit order or the panel name or the distance. So you can order how those panels are laid out on the single line. And then we have options for all of the graphics so that you can choose what graphic is going to be inserted by default for the different types of equipment. Those options are at the project level. You can also set those in the devices and families themselves. So if we go take a look at this panel, if we open up this family in ElectroBIM, we have the family edit command. And here, if you specify that this is a panel, you can specify the graphics that are going to be used on the single line diagram. So this way you can take your families, you can specify the single line graphics so that when the generate command is run, it's going to put in the families that you want. So you can take something like a transfer switch that our software by default is going to see that it looks kind of like a panel because Revit doesn't really have a way to differentiate a panel and a transfer switch. So in our software, you can say, okay, I want to use the transfer switch graphic on the single line rather than the panel graphic. And that way, every time you have that family in your model, it knows to use that family in the single line by default. So that is the generate one line command. Another big command that we added is the override review. The generate one line is the kind of command that shows off really well and is something that's like a flagship feature that you want to show to people who are looking at the software. The override review is really a feature for depth that it's going to be super helpful for someone using the software who's been using our software for a little while. You'll understand how this is helpful. It's not something that coming into it that you're necessarily thinking, I need an override review feature in my software. What it does is it lists all the places where you've changed a setting off of the default value from ElectroBIM. So we can see here that for the CTP, we've updated the graphics. So it's using a different single line graphic, that this panel here, this conductor size has been changed from the default. So you know that you have these changes that have been made. So you can just review what's happening in your project. You can also put comments on here so that you know when you come back to it in 3 to 6 months and you've forgotten what you did with your design, why you made that change. So it's a way to actually document the changes that you're making, either for yourself or for other people who are working on the project. So as an example of that, if we make a change to something, I'm going to select this panel here, this MP1B. If we come in here and we change the conductor size, let's say we just want to make this one an aluminum conductor, we can do that. Design Master is still going to size it to aluminum. And then when we do override review, that's going to be added. So we know that this MP1B is now an aluminum conductor. Say you did some value engineering and you decide that aluminum rather than copper made sense there. Okay, now we can make a note so that you know coming back, that's why you've changed that conductor to be aluminum. Another feature that we improved is the panel edit command. On the back end, we changed the framework that we were using for it. That's not terribly important for you. It's not going to change how the functionality works. In the process of doing that, we did upgrade this to add edit multiple as a feature so that you can actually select multiple panels and make changes to more than one at a time. So you can select them and then you can adjust them. I could change all 3 of those panels to be 300 amps for their bus size. So when you need to make changes to multiple panels, that's a lot easier now that we have that edit multiple functionality included. So that's the main change that you're going to see for the panel edit, is that it supports that edit multiple functionality. If you have multiple monitors that have different resolutions, these new dialogues, one thing the framework adds is that it'll handle those different resolutions. So as you're adding 4K monitors and you're using the scaling in Windows, these new dialogues that we're creating support that better. That's the technical reason we made that change. But other than that, you're not really going to see any difference. Edit multiple functionality is really where you see value in that change. Staying on this panel, we also added the ability to link parameters in Revit to our parameters in ElectroBIM. So for example, we could have this overcurrent protection. Right now it's being sized based upon the bus size. We could actually have it based upon a parameter in the Revit family. So if you want to have your breaker size set based upon a parameter that you've defined, you can do that. Another example would be for equipment. If you have MCA and MOCP parameters, particularly ones that are coming from the mechanical engineer, you could then link those to what we have happening in the instance edit so that when the mechanical engineer updates those values, it's going to drive what's happening in ElectroBIM without having them needing to make the changes in our software. They can make it in Revit on the parameters. So if we run instance edit, we can set that MCA and the MOCP to be based upon a parameter. You do need a parameter defined to match it to. I don't have any good ones in this example here, but this is where you would do it. And that's for most settings in our software. So most places you can set information, you have the ability to do the based on parameter and have it load based upon a parameter you have defined in your family. Another feature is the ability to export our information to Evolve. So Evolve is involved on the contracting side. They do the conduit layout, the wireway layout, prefab, more of the construction side of the electrical industry. And so they're handling all of that. We don't really want to get into any of that. And their customers also need various design tools, and they don't really want to do what we do either. So rather than try and duplicate each other's software, it made more sense to put together an integration. So what this does is it lets you take the wire sizes from our software and move it over to theirs. So you run the export command, and it's not all that exciting because it creates a single file. And then in Evolve, they have this conduit run schedule where it has a list of all of the conduit runs in the project. You can import that file and it will fill it in with the information from ElectroBIM. So we run the import, pull in that Excel file, and now all of these wire sizes, and actually all of these conduit sizes is the most important thing, are being pulled from the conduit sizes that you're sizing in the ElectroBIM software. So that then gets you started. And then if you're using Evolve, this is helpful for laying out your conduits and getting the sizes to match. Also in the panel edit command, we added the ability to do custom feeder IDs. And I'll go to the single line diagram to demonstrate that. We take a look at this panel here, this LP1B again. We previously had the ability to do a custom feeder callout. This is where if you need to do some sort of configuration that our software can't handle, say you're doing multiple parallel runs in a single conduit, our software actually, we can't do that. So the way you do it is with the custom callout. Or if you want to label it as a bus gutter or a bus duct, you'd handle that with a custom callout. We didn't have any way to set the feeder ID. So this feeder ID that's showing up here is going to end up as a question mark, and that's not what you want. So now you can actually specify what that feeder ID should be. So we'll just call the callout custom, and we'll set the feeder ID also to custom. So you can have that feeder ID labeled there, whatever you need it to be for that custom feeder callout. Because if you're creating the feeder callout with a custom value, we don't have any way to really link that to the feeder IDs that we're otherwise generating, because it's being generated in a way our software can't handle. And then we made a number of changes to customization just to make it a little bit easier to handle all of that. In the import and the export, we added toggles so you can choose what pieces you're importing and exporting, so you don't have to import your entire customization. So if you want to import and export just part of it, you can do that. So you have that control when you're transferring customization between projects. In the feeder ID schedule, we added a column to notate whether the feeder ID is using the equipment or service ground, because we actually do the ID differently based upon the grounds type. So we added that as a column just so that it's more clear what those feeder IDs are and how those are working. And then in the project options, we went through and we organized this. Previously, everything was just in one big group. We took some time and organized these into subgroups so that you can find your customization a little bit easier. So when you're making changes to customization, you can track things down. If you want to see what's related to voltage drop, we have a section on just the voltage drop customization. And those are the features that came out in the last year. Hopefully you've seen all those and you're using them. If you're not, hopefully it's something that you can start using going forward. Thank you for watching today's Design Master training. Contact us with questions or comments by emailing support@designmaster.biz.